Good morning, everyone. Well, good morning from where I'm at. I'm in Los Angeles, California, so west coast of the United States. It is currently 9:04 a.m. Pacific time where I am. My name is Danika Herod, and I am Tableau's marketing manager of community content and events. So I am pretty much overseeing Iron Viz and also helping out with TC. I am going to, because I realized I'm sitting on the Q&A slide, so I'm going to go backwards and go here. So today we're going to be talking about Iron Viz 2022 and also going back and revisiting 2021, talking with Sarah Bartlett and Lisa Trescott and giving you tips and tricks and also taking any questions that you might have to make your qualifier entry the best that it can be. Iron Viz's slogan is, win or learn, you cannot lose. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and just move forward and introduce Iron Viz 2022. If you are not up to date, qualifiers are currently open. They're open until February 7th. And here's a little bit about Iron Viz. Iron Viz is the ultimate data competition. And we have 3 finalists that come out of qualifiers. First place is $10,000 cash prize with a $5,000 donation to a nonprofit of your choice. Second place is a $5,000 cash prize with a $2,000 donation to a nonprofit. And third place is a $2,000 cash prize with a $1,000 donation. I'm seeing so many people just talking about where they're from, and there's people from all over the place. Wow. Also, just quickly, my hosting style is I try to be funny, so I'm holding myself back from trying to be funny. But if a joke slips out, it's just who I am. I can't change it. Okay. So this year's qualifier theme is visualizing the arts. Be funny. We are basically looking for anything and everything relating to the arts. It can be anything from painting, drawing, to music, dance, film, anything within the arts we are looking for. And you can go to tableau.com/ironviz if you want to join. You can also keep an eye on our Twitter, twitter.com/tableau, and we're posting about qualifiers and making sure that we are sharing the link out so people can enter. All right, I wanted to get through my introduction very fast so we can go ahead and bring on Sarah Bartlett. If you do not know who Sarah Bartlett is, Sarah is a social ambassador for Tableau and just a huge part of the community, incredible help to anyone who ever asks questions. Sarah's always there, and she's also been helping us out a ton with presenting, and she just actually had a chat with Lisa, so this is perfect. So I'm going to hand it over to you, Sarah.
Thanks, Danika. So today I'm going to be talking about lessons that we've learned from Iron Quest, which is the project that I run. Let me just share my screen. I'm going to stop my video because I'm presenting on a different screen, so I don't want it to be off-putting. Let me know if you can see my screen, Danika, please.
It looks perfect.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so yeah, lessons from Iron Quest that will help you succeed at Iron Viz. And thank you, Danika, for inviting me on today, and thank you for the introduction. My name is Sarah Bartlett. I work as a Tableau enablement consultant at Red Hat. I'm a 2-time Tableau Zen Master and a 4-time Tableau ambassador. So I'm currently a Tableau public ambassador, but I was a social ambassador before that. And back in 2019, I founded a project called Iron Quest, which runs every month and follows the same format as the Iron Viz feeder competitions. And I'm going to go over what Iron Quest is a lot more in my talk. But before I go any further, I want to ask you a question. So when was the last time that you took a chance? And by a chance, I just really mean trying something new and kind of pushing yourself out of your comfort zone. So it could be something as simple as trying out a new recipe. So maybe something a little bit more daring than what you do normally, or perhaps you've taken up a completely new hobby this year. But whatever it is, sometimes taking a risk or a chance can traditionally mean something scary or anxiety inducing, but it doesn't have to be. So taking chances can really expose ourselves to positive outcomes that you never would have experienced before, and can really help to boost your confidence. And so back in 2018, I took a chance and I entered the Iron Viz Europe competition for the first time. And really, I did this because I had some time on my hands and I thought it would be a fun experience, and it would be a good opportunity to learn something new and really challenge myself and improve my Tableau skills. So for this Iron Viz, the topic was European cities. And so I put together this visualization. It's actually a really long form viz. This is the top part that you can see on the screen now, but it was all about European cities. And in my case, the cheapest European cities to travel to if you're on a budget. So I found a data set that was aimed at backpackers and visualized it and showed all the cheapest cities and kind of some key features about them. And I got some inspiration from looking at Pinterest. So I was looking at kind of infographics on there and different travel sites. And that's where I came up with the design. But all in all, it was a really fun experience putting this viz together. And I tried out a lot of new techniques. I got to try Mapbox and lots of all that other cool creative elements. But I entered for fun. I didn't think anything would come of it. It was purely just a fun experience, and it was really to help my learning. Then to my shock, I actually ended up in the top 3, which meant I had to progress to the final and participate live on stage. So this is me on stage at Iron Viz 2018 in Europe. It was in London. And it was just an amazing experience. Yes, it was very scary. So I had to build a visualization in 20 minutes in front of, I think, 4,000 people. But it was an amazing experience and one that I wouldn't change. So after this, after this event, I was thinking, what could I do to help more people experience this and help more people to encourage them to enter Iron Viz and just have, just for the fun of it. And I thought, wouldn't it be great if you could practice for Iron Viz throughout the year rather than just waiting until the feeder arrives and just, taking part in the real thing. At the time, there were some people saying, that they felt like they didn't have the skills they needed to enter Iron Viz because they struggled with data collection. And obviously there's a lot of projects out there in the community, like things like Workout Wednesday or Make Up a Monday, where they provide data sets for you and they're all kind of cleaned and ready to go. And people are very comfortable with those projects, but what they're less comfortable with is actually sourcing data and preparing data. And that's a key element of Iron Viz because you are required to source your own data and build a viz in most feeders. And sometimes that can be off-putting. And also with some of these projects as well, you don't get to practice the criteria that Iron Viz judges you on. So that's design, storytelling, and analysis. And that's why I came up with the idea of IronQuest. So IronQuest is a monthly project I founded back in 2019 that's modeled around the Iron Viz feeder competitions. And we review the vizes against the scoring criteria, so design, storytelling, and analysis. And every month I'll pick a theme, and it's usually something really broad. So as an example, the last couple of ones we've done Viz a year or decade. And before that, I did a collaboration with Sports Viz Sunday, which is another community project. And we did visualizing sporting heroes and legends. And before that, we did travel and vacations. So you can see there's a really broad range of topics that we do, and that each topic is intentionally broad. So you can really make it your own and visualize something that you enjoy. And now every month we run this project, and every month there's an opportunity to request feedback on your work as well. So you could, when you submit your viz, you can say you want feedback, and then I'll meet with a co-host and we'll share feedback on a call, which is shared up to YouTube. So you can watch us reviewing your viz and sharing some tips to make it better. Now, just so when I started IronQuest, I had a few things in mind that I wanted to be part of our mission. And one of those was to create a safe space for practice. So again, thinking about the Iron Viz competition, when the feeders are around, you enter it, and that's kind of your one and only chance. But what I wanted to do with IronQuest was create that safe space so you could practice all year round without judgment. So you just use it as a ground where you could practice, try new things, and not worry about any kind of implications of that. No judgment, a judgment-free zone. I also wanted to provide diverse topics. As I mentioned before, often we might participate in some projects and the topic may not be something that you really enjoy visualizing. So with IronQuest, I intentionally make the topics broad so you can really shape them as you wish and visualize things that you enjoy. And that just makes it for a much more fun experience. I mentioned we offer feedback as well, so you can get feedback on your work to help you improve your skills. So then when it comes around to Iron Viz time, you're in a more comfortable position. I try and help authors reach new audiences. So at the end of every month, we have a roundup blog post, which features every single viz that was entered, and also make an effort to try and feature some of the vizzes that are entered on social media as well. So just by sharing them out to my audiences, so hopefully they'll reach new audiences and help those new authors find new followers. I really want people to learn and have fun with Iron Quest. So that's a key portion of it. So I try and make the themes fun. And ultimately, if you do want to use it to prepare for Iron Viz, that's absolutely fine. But if you don't want to enter Iron Viz, that's fine too. You can just use it as a fun way to practice visualizing data in Tableau. This is the cycle that we go through every month. So typically we announce a topic, you go and source the data, you build your viz, submit it for feedback if you wish, and then once the feedback has been delivered, you can obviously take that away and iterate on it if you so wish. So it's been running since 2019. So far we've received 680 entries to the challenge across 19 different themes or challenges. And there's been 332 unique participants, an amazing 49 visitor days as well. Not quite 50, but we'll get there soon, I'm sure. And the visualizations you see on the screen now are from our quantified self round, which we ran back in 2020. So during lockdown, where everyone kind of was tracking data about themselves and their lives, which was super interesting. So now from running Iron Quest, I've learned a lot of lessons and just experiences, both from my own Iron Quest journey and from entering Iron Viz myself. And when embarking on any new visualization project, there's often a number of decisions that we need to make or hurdles that we need to overcome. So I want to talk you through some of these today with Iron Viz in mind. And all the examples I'll share with you are examples of visualizations that were entered for Iron Quest. So number one would be to viz what you love. So you'll find that it's far easier to visualize a topic that you're passionate about than something you're not interested in. And because so much work goes into putting these visualizations together, particularly for Iron Viz, you really want to visualize something that you have a love for. And I'll give you an example. So I'm unlikely to build a viz on a Netflix show that I've never watched before because one, I'd know very little about it. I'd know nothing about the characters or the storyline, and it would require me to do a lot of research before I could comfortably visualize the data and present it in its best light. And that wouldn't be a particularly fun experience for me if I had no interest in the show. But that same show could be, so other people may love that show and they may know a lot about it and may really enjoy that process. So as I say, everyone loves different things. So you pick what you love and you go and visualize it, and you'll find that experience is much more enjoyable. And I've got some examples here of people that have just done just that. So we have a viz here from Mark Corbridge, which was entered for Iron Quest. And so he has a love for Buffy the Vampire Slayer, which I think is awesome. And he did a viz here looking at the baddies that kind of Buffy fought in throughout the shows and some data around them. And what really shows through in this viz is his love for the topic and also his knowledge of the topic as well. So I know less about this topic, so I would have struggled to put this together, but his love for the themes shows through, and it really, you can tell that he had fun building this. So I enjoyed interacting with this viz. We have another one here from Abby Taylor. So this was entered for the Sporting Heroes and Legends round that I ran with the Sports Viz Sunday crew back a few months ago. And Abby looked at the career of, my slides have gone weird, but she looked at the career of a netball player called Jiva Mentor, who played for Great Britain, I believe. And what really shines through in this viz is Abby's love for netball as a sport, and also for Jiva Mentor, the professional player. What I love about this viz is not only has she presented data about Jiva Mentor and other professional netball players, but she's also provided some context around what netball is and some stats around netball in case her audience weren't so familiar with the topic as she was. But again, her love for the topic really shone through. Around Iron Viz time, a lot of people talk about finding that perfect data set, and you'll see people tweeting saying, I'm really struggling to find data and I can't find that data that I would really like. And then with Iron Viz, there's nothing wrong with creating your own data set. That's what I did for my viz, and I see a lot of other people do that as well. And this is most common when you're building out something that's quantified self-related. And you could apply that to the Iron Viz theme this year. So visualizing the arts, perhaps you're into art yourself, or maybe you're in a band, I don't know, whatever it is, there's definitely a way you could apply that kind of data to this theme. And there's some examples of people that have done just that. I've got on the screen now. So this Viz is by Adam Green. And Adam decided for the black and white round for IronQuest we ran, I think, the end of 2020, he wanted to look at his Vizes on Tableau Public and see what color background he used most often. So was it black, white, or some other color? And he put that together in this wonderful design to show, the kind of trends that he went through, or in terms of picking the background colors for his Viz. I thought this was a really lovely, creative way of showing this data. We have another Viz here from Judith Becker. So Judith decided to track her spending. This is around the beginning of the coronavirus kind of lockdowns that were happening. So she wanted to see where her money was going. So was it going on bills, necessities, or was she just simply buying stuff for herself? And it was really interesting to see kind of the trends in her spending habits over time. And I thought this was created and presented really nicely. And finally, there's a Viz here by Anne Sophie, and Anne decided to look at her geocaching journey from 2020 to 2021. So this was entered for our most recent round, which was Viz a year or decade. So she showed how she picked up geocaching at the beginning, the end of 2020, and how her journey had kind of gone through the following year. And I thought this was really interesting because she provided personal data, but also she overlaid that with some context, so we understood, why some months she was doing more geocaching than other months, and that kind of thing. I thought this was presented really nicely. When you're embarking on any visualization project, it's really important that you understand your why, and really understand what you're trying to achieve. And I think when it comes to Iron Viz, it's important that you understand your objective. And the objectives usually go down two routes. So either you could do an exploratory Viz, which looks at sharing a finding, or maybe satisfying a curiosity. So maybe you want to dig into a data set and visualize your findings. Or the declarative route, which is where you set out to educate. Maybe you want to talk about a topic that you love and educate people on that topic. Or maybe you want to convince your audience of something. And I've got some examples of Vizes that do both. So this Viz by Gary Collins is very much on the exploratory, kind of satisfying a curiosity side of things. So this was entered for the IronQuest Myths, Mystery and Magic round in 2021. And what Gary did here was he looked at some UFO sighting data. And initially he set out with a really big data set of all the UFO sightings in the US. But he found something really interesting that happened in California in 2015. So there was a huge spike in UFO sightings in this 1 hour segment. And he thought, something strange must have happened there. So he delved into the data a little bit more and did some research. And then it turned out that was actually, it was confirmed that there was a missile launched from a submarine, which caused a bright light. But subsequently, a lot of people thought it was a UFO, so they dialed 911, and hence why we had all of these reports of UFO sightings in that 1 hour segment. And I thought this was a really nice way of just really satisfying that curiosity and narrowing in on a larger data set on something that he found particularly interesting. Now, on the other side of things, so on the declarative side, this Viz by Ali looks at the lack of racial diversity among winners of the Oscars, or the Academy Awards as they're also known. And really this Viz sets out to educate. So Ali, I'm assuming, approached this knowing that there was a lack of diversity or racial diversity among winners of the Oscars. And he really wanted to emphasize that for his Viz. So you can see here, he's drawn these images that almost look like the awards that are given out at the ceremony, and really emphasize the fact that there are so few non-white Oscar winners. And I thought this Viz was really powerful and presented in a really fantastic way to really educate the audience on this problem. Next tip is to provide context. So don't assume that everyone will understand the topic you're presenting. You may know it really, really well, but your audience may know nothing about it. So whatever you're presenting, it almost always needs an introduction. And I've got some Vizes that have done this really, really well. So in this Viz by Lindsay Betzendahl, she explored some data looking at pregnancy in prison. So this was entered for the Iron Viz and Project Health Viz collaboration we did a few years back. And we were, in particular, we were looking at mental health of women in prisons. And this Viz looks at the data on a very distilled level. So she, rather than looking at the data as a whole, Lindsay focused right in on one data point. So she found one particular story in the data and followed that story through. So she was a lady in a prison in Perth in Australia, and she puts that into context around what that lady may have gone through. And I just thought it was very interesting to put it in that way and really bring the data to life. So often we'll look at these huge data sets that will be focused on people, and we'll forget that there's a story behind each of those data points. So I thought this was a particularly powerful way of putting it. And then at the end of the viz, she kind of draws it out at a higher level to show, how pregnancy in prison, what pregnancy in prison looks like in the US, and how many people kind of fall into different categories. But again, I just thought it was a really powerful way of putting it and presenting a topic that most people will know that not much about. Another viz here is by Nicole Klassen. So this one looks at the history of Doctor Who. So Doctor Who is a popular TV show from the UK. And this is a very long viz, so I can't show the whole thing, but what Nicole did was she actually put it into context. So she, rather than just kind of assuming that everyone knew what Doctor Who was, she provided the background, and every part of this viz is explained. So she shows how many years it's been running, what Doctor Who's all about, who the characters are, the typical plots, that kind of thing. And even if you've never seen a single episode of Doctor Who, you'll be able to understand this viz and appreciate it. And again, I think it does that really well. So to recap the points I've covered, viz what you love, build your own data sets, understand your why, and provide context. And if you do all those 4 things, I think not only will you have fun doing it, you'll also be able to build an effective viz and tell a great story. So if you're interested in joining IronQuest, you can find out more about it on my blog, which is sarahlovesdata.co.uk, or you could just search the hashtag IronQuest on social media and you'll find us that way. But if you are entering Iron Viz this year, hopefully I've convinced you to do so, or if not, Lisa will convince you in her talk. There's a couple of things to bear in mind and remember. When you are entering, you're entering for you and nobody else. It's about you and your journey. Try and ignore what anyone else is doing and focus on your own viz, and don't get too swayed by the things that you may see out there. You're entering to create something and learn something new. Have fun doing it. It's not meant to be a chore. It's meant to be a great process where you learn and have fun along the way and really challenge yourself. So that could be challenging yourself to try a new technique, maybe try a new chart type, maybe try a new complementary software with Tableau to aid your visualization. And as Danika said at the beginning, you win or you learn and you can't lose. And the tweet I have up here is by Liam Spencer, and he tweeted this after entering Iron Viz a few years back, and I think it really summed up the sentiment that he'd learned new things, he made some friends, he'd done things he hadn't done before, and he made himself proud. And as far as he was concerned, he won Iron Viz when he hit that post button just by doing those things alone. So thank you for listening. And as I said at the beginning, take a chance. You never know what might happen. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sarah. That was awesome. So I'm not really a data person. My background is 100% community, but I've worked in anime and video games. So seeing data sets and seeing vizes in front of me on a presentation by you where you're explaining it is, I don't know, it makes me feel really thankful, but also it makes my brain feel like it's getting a massage. I go through Tableau Public every single day. And so I'm learning how to kind of go through vizes and understand them more and understand the different types. But I think having them kind of condensed and presented to me is just so super helpful.
Thank you. I think so often,
much.
Yeah, I think so often we see vizes on social media and you'll hit and you won't really interact with them. And that's one thing I love about reviewing the vizes for IronQuest, because we get to sit down and actually look at them in detail and interact.
Yeah.
And you really learn to appreciate them so much more. So
right.
Thank you.
Right. I think the easiest way to find IronQuest is just look up the hashtag and sort by latest. I love to browse through things. And if you're someone who has always wanted to get involved with Iron Viz but is intimidated, it's just a great resource. We have a bunch of questions, but I'm going to hold off. So we see your questions in chat and we see your questions in the Q&A section, and we'll make sure that we get to them towards the end. But now I'm going to go ahead and bring in Lisa. Sarah, if you want to stop sharing your screen, and I'll just open mine up. And we will go here. So we're going to bring in Lisa Trescott. Lisa Trescott, if you do not know, won Iron Viz the finals in 2021. So I'm going to go actually, Lisa, to your qualifier entry from 2021. And I would love if you could just talk about, you know, how you knew that you were going to do this, how long it took you, where you looked for data, and what inspired you in terms of like the style of the viz.
Sure. So I actually had the idea for this viz a couple of weeks before the feeder theme was announced. Like so many of my more like creative fun vizzes, the idea kind of just popped into my head just through random questions that I kind of come up with while I'm just like having a daily interaction. So in this case, I've been watching the most recent season of RuPaul's Drag Race, which is my favorite reality competition show. And at the end of every episode, they have a lip sync for your life where the two bottom queens compete head to head to see who's going to get to stay in the competition. And I love that aspect of the show because, you know, it's kind of like the final like way a queen can stay in the competition. So as I was watching the most recent season, I had noticed that I hadn't seen any wig reveals, which is where a queen is wearing one wig and then during the performance, she takes it off and there's another wig underneath. So it's like this surprise reveal. And we were getting towards the finale and I hadn't seen one. And I thought that was weird. For context, the season that's running right now has had 3 episodes and 2 wig reveals. So it was weird that I was like, okay, we're like 12 episodes in, I haven't seen a wig reveal. So that just kind of got my brain going down a bunch of rabbit hole questions of, I wonder if, you know, winning lip syncs have more splits or more death drops and, you know, who's done the most reveals and who's done the most elements. And so I kind of had these questions brewing and I kind of just put them off to the side and said, okay, well, I'm going to put this on my Viz to-do list. So then when the feeder theme was announced as Data plus Joy, I was like, oh, well, that's a no-brainer. I know exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to do RuPaul's Drag Race. So I started by, well, I would say looking for data, but there isn't data out there. But what I did find was a RuPaul wiki page that had all of the lip syncs listed out by season and episode. And so it had every episode, every queen that was in each lip sync, who won the song. And so that kind of gave me a base file to start with. And then from there, I kind of planned out what things I wanted to look for and code within each lip sync. And then I got to rewatch every lip sync, which was incredibly fun. It's probably the most I've ever had collecting data for anything. And so once I had everything and once I had all my charts and whatnot, the design kind of came from the season 13 promotional material that they had put out. There was all this color scheme and it had these kind of little stars. And so I kind of just pulled from inspiration from that in terms of design and color choice and whatnot.
Amazing. I have a question. So Alyssa wrote like a list of questions, but I'm going off, going off of that list because I love that you did a viz on RuPaul's Drag Race. It's one of the things that I think is really cool just about going through Tableau Public is you see vizzes that are clearly about things that people are genuinely interested in. The fact that you like pulled your own data and made sets and went off of that, I think is really cool. When you are like building a data set for yourself, do you save that information? Do you put that information out publicly for other people to access, or you know, like say someone else wants to do a viz on RuPaul's Drag Race someday?
Yeah, so I didn't publish the data set anywhere. I know within Tableau Public, you could download the data from the viz. So you're able to do that if you wanted to go onto Tableau Public and download the viz and the data. If anybody wanted it, I would happily send it to them, but no, I didn't host it anywhere.
Cool. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and swap over and ask some of these questions because I think they make for awesome conversations. What benefits have you found from entering Iron Viz, whether that's just like expanding on your data knowledge or the types of vizzes that you like to look at anything?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, and we've already kind of touched on it a lot, is just I learned so much in a very condensed amount of time. I was pretty new to the community when the feeder was announced, and I hadn't done a whole lot of kind of more creative vizzes, and so by just doing the feeder, I learned a lot of different chart types. I had never made a radar chart, and the Flare-Lash twins made it very easy to make one. They had a template out there, so I was able to use that and kind of reverse engineer it. This was my first long form viz, so it's the first time doing anything like that. I think just learning a lot of things that I liked about design and different chart types that I like to use. So I learned a ton. And then I also was able to connect with a lot of people in the community. Like I said, I was pretty new to the data fam. And so Sarah actually put together these amazing feedback sessions where you could get one-on-one time with kind of established people in the community. So I got to talk to 3 different Tableau Zen Masters, and each one of them was able to give me unique and different feedback, which just continued to make the viz better until I finished it and it was finalized. So yeah, I would say learning and connecting with people in the community and just enhancing my skills and getting better was probably the biggest things that I could have taken away from this.
Awesome. I have a question about speed. When you're doing your qualifier entry, are you practicing for speed at all, considering the finals have to be done in 20 minutes, or you're just, making the best viz you can and then worry about practicing speed later?
Yeah, so much like Sarah said, I had no expectation of making the finals. So I was just sitting around kind of meandering through this build. You have a month to work on it. So I would spend a weekend working on it, and then I'd walk away for like the whole work week. And then I'd come back the weekend after and look at it again and like, oh, I still like that. Oh, I want to change this. So it was a very slow process, which is kind of all of my build processes. I'm never trying to go for speed. I never thought I'd be in the position where I had to build a viz in 20 minutes. And I think a lot of times too, with the feeder vizzes, there's no way I could have built this in 20 minutes. It's, there's too much in there. There's too many different charts. It's long form. There's just so much formatting and stuff that you would have to do that I don't think this could be achieved in 20 minutes. So it's a totally different ballgame, the feeder versus the finals, which is kind of crazy because you think, oh, I've had a month to do this, and now they think something in 20 minutes, like, wow.
Yeah.
Not quite. So no, it's a very different process, I would say, for the feeder and the finals.
I wanted to ask, what is the difference between, I guess, the mental approach between qualifiers and finals? Like you said, for qualifiers, you can look at your viz for a weekend, leave, come back to it. For finals, you really can't, because you have you have specific data given to you, and then you have to work off of that. So what is the difference in your approach?
Yeah, you definitely don't have the luxury of time or topic choice when you get to the finals. So it's very different. We had about 2.5 weeks with the data set, which is pretty short to, learn a new data set, learn a new topic. I was not familiar at all with the music industry or how data was captured or how different industries looked at that data. So you're learning data, you're learning a topic, you're finding a story, you're building your viz, you're learning to build that viz in 20 minutes, and then you're putting together a presentation, and all in 2.5 weeks. So it's completely different. Like I said, the feeder for me was just a super enjoyable, fun process. Like Sarah said, you pick a topic that you love, and then you just have fun with it. This was an incredibly fun topic for me to visualize and put together, and it was a great experience. And then you get to the finals, and it's all of a sudden there's just way more pressure. So yeah, you don't have that, oh, I can just work on this over the weekend and then walk away. You can't walk away. You're working on it, work, you're up late, it's still a lot of fun, but there's a lot more stress involved. And so say my approach was just, learn the topic and data as fast as I could, and then just iterate through as many charts and ideas as I could as fast as I could.
What was the time between when you came up with what your final viz was going to be, and when the vizzes were due?
For the feeder or the finals?
The finals.
Oh, so for the finals, I had a completely different topic up until about a week and a half before I threw it out. So I had,
Wow.
I was going in one direction and I was looking at the different genres that different countries were Shazamming the most, because I found that pretty much every country was Shazamming pop music except for 5 countries. And I thought, well, that's interesting. What's going on with these 5 countries? And I had started to put together a design and kind of, which I really liked a lot. And I had really gone down this path. And then I got to this point where I was like, this doesn't make a lot of sense. We don't have all of the country data. We have artist data. And so I just felt like my analysis is totally flawed. And so I threw it out. And it was about a week and a half, like I said before. And I kind of went back to whenever I'm kind of thinking of ideas for stories or an idea for a viz, I usually just make a list of questions that I think would be interesting to pursue and explore in the data.
Right.
So back to that set of questions. And one that I had in there was, are there trend-setting cities? So are there cities that are catching on to new music before other places? And so I identified a couple of breakout artists in that time frame, and then was looking at them at a geographic level. And I noticed that Giveon was hitting in all these Southeast Asian countries before other places. And I thought, well, that's odd to me. I don't know much about the music industry, but I don't usually think of Southeast Asia as a hotbed for R&B. So I'm going to look into that. And so I started to kind of dive into that a little more. And that's when I found that little tidbit about, there was this TikTok user in the Philippines who uploaded a viral video with his song. That's why it was catching on. I was like, well, that's really interesting. And that's kind of when I pivoted and went down that, the path that I ultimately went down, which was to really just dive into 3 artists and kind of tell their story through their data. So yeah, so it was about a week and a half. And then that was just when I the medal. I was like, I have to get this done. I don't want to be the first.
Oh my gosh.
History is just like, I didn't come up with anything. Sorry.
That's anxiety inducing just hearing it a week and a half. But congratulations.
Thanks. Yeah, I was not in a good headspace the day I threw my original story out.
Oh my gosh. I would love to hear any time-saving tips that you could share, and how much time should one expect to spend on their viz to get to a good place to submit?
So like I said, I don't go for speed usually unless you find yourself in the finals anymore. But for the feeder, you have that month. I actually like to kind of go at a slower pace, because when you walk away and take time off, I feel like you get a little space, and then when you come back, you see things with fresh eyes again. So my goal is not usually speed, right? And another reason for that is because I tend to put a lot of detail in, which takes a lot of time, formatting tooltips and putting, just there's a lot of detail in my feeder viz that, you can't put into a viz when you're building it in 20 minutes. So typically I'm pretty slow, which people might not believe. But yeah, when it comes to the finals, and I think just being faster, it comes down to practice. The faster you can get at building charts, and the more you expose yourself to different charts. So, perusing Tableau Public and getting on Pinterest and things like that to just look at what kind of charts are out there and things you might want to create, the faster those ideas are going to come to you. So it really, I would say, comes down to just practice. And when it comes to getting faster at building charts and coming up with designs.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And then, so spending time, like I said, I would probably spend, depending on how inspired and creative I was feeling, anywhere from 4 to 6 hours each day on the weekend. So maybe, 8 to 12 hours over the weekend. And then I would walk away, and I'd come back and do the same thing the following weekend. And then I think when we got to, the deadline was coming up after work, I was spending time in the evening as well to kind of polish things up and get it ready. So I didn't time myself, but, a couple hours over the weekend, sometimes in the evening. And yeah. So
I wonder if people do time themselves. I'm sure people do. I spent 50, 60 hours on this viz. I'm very curious.
I kind of wish I had.
Yeah. Can you share some tips for pulling data together and getting it cleaned up?
Yeah, so like I said, I would try to start with finding as much data that already exists out there. because, and use a reputable source. Don't, pull from somewhere that it's questionable. But like I said, for this viz, for my lip sync viz, that data didn't really exist, but what did exist was that wiki page. So I was able to start there and then, kind of build out my data set. And because I was doing something that was like natural observation, there was a lot of planning up front before I even started watching, because I didn't want to have to go back and, add something and then rewatch things, which I ended up doing anyway. So I started by, mapping out all the metrics that I wanted to code for. And then I started watching the most recent season and going backwards, which I think was a mistake. I should have either jumped around or started, from the beginning, because the more recent seasons were what were more recently in my mind. And so the categories I came up with were things that queens were doing now. But as I was going back in time, I was seeing, oh, they didn't always do this. They did something different. And so I ended up adding categories and then having to go back and rewatch some of the more recent lip syncs, which actually ended up being kind of a good QA process, because in couple of the lip syncs, I had missed something. So,
Right.
I would say just find out what you can that's already out there, and then plan and make sure that the things you want to collect. And then I would do a round of QA, either spot checking or in my case, rewatching things, and just to make sure that things are clean and ready to go. And if you have access to Tableau Prep, definitely use Prep. I have a giant gaping hole in my life now that I don't have Prep anymore, not being in the finals. But it's a great resource to help clean and restructure your data.
Yeah, I was just about to ask if there were any features within Tableau that you would recommend for others to tap into.
So I love parameter actions. I think you can add a lot of really cool user interface elements via parameter actions. And if you're not sure what I'm talking about, if you look at Zach Geis's Tableau public profile, he has a ton of examples. I feel like he's like the master of parameter actions and UI. So I love it. I think you can add so many cool little touches that really help enhance your visuals. And I also love a show hide container. I love, a lot of times you have more than you want to put on the actual viz, but you don't want to leave it out. So having a container that can pop out and show and hide is really helpful too.
Awesome. Are there any tools or resources that you leverage for the Qualifier and or Iron Viz finals?
So for the Qualifier, I built all of my design elements that I didn't do in Tableau just in PowerPoint. So all of the text and everything I just did in PowerPoint and then saved them as images and put them into Tableau. And then for the finals, I had actually taken a course in Photoshop over the summer. So I was able to create a background image in Photoshop. So it was the first time I had ever done that, which was really exciting. But I like doing that better than PowerPoint, because within Photoshop, you can specify the pixel size of your canvas. So you can make it the exact same size as your dashboard. And then a lot of times with PowerPoint, when I did PowerPoint stuff, you will lose some image quality when you, because you can't specify the pixels. So when you resize images, they might get a little blurrier. And that doesn't happen when you're able to use a design tool where you can specify the pixels, like Photoshop or Illustrator. Right. Figma is a free one. So I use Photoshop for the finals. I also use Mapbox, which Sarah spoke to earlier. So that allows you to make custom map backgrounds that you can easily use within Tableau. They give you a link once you're done designing your background, and then you just copy paste it into Tableau and you can use it. And then I also used a stock image in my final build, and I got that from unsplash.com. That's probably my favorite site to get free stock images. Just make sure you credit your source. And I think
you said it was unsplash.com?
Unsplash. UNSPLASH.
Cool. Awesome. Okay, cool. I have one more question just before we go into, I'll bring Sarah back and we'll do general Q&A. You said that you got into the community kind of shortly before qualifiers. What got you interested in the community, or what kind of took you from not being part of it to being part of it?
Yeah, so I had been using Tableau for about 4-ish years at work, up, before that point. And I had learned a ton at work, but I felt like at that point, my learning had kind of slowed. Right? We're using the same data sets, we're visualizing the same metrics. And at that point too, we had developed dashboard templates. So I felt like, okay, I've kind of, my learning's just slowed down. And so I felt like if I wanted to continue to grow and get better and keep learning, I would need to start looking at data and projects outside of work. And that's kind of when I turned to the community projects. And I started by just doing a couple makeover Mondays, but I didn't really put them anywhere. I put them on Tableau Public, but I didn't post them anywhere, ask anyone for feedback. They were just kind of out there. And then I kept coming across the acronym RWFD when I was looking at Tableau Public dashboards. And so I Googled it, and it was real world fake data. And so I thought that would be kind of cool to do because it's, visualizing a different industry outside of, I work in higher ed, so it's outside of higher ed. And so I put one of those together and I put it on public. And then I realized, by looking through the blog post, that supports RWFD, that if I wanted to get feedback and actually submit it to the project, I was going to have to publish it or post it on Twitter. And I did not have a Twitter account. I didn't want a Twitter account. I'm not super big into social media. So I did so very begrudgingly. And I thought, I'm just going to get Twitter and I'll just post this one viz and maybe I'll follow people and, whatever. So I posted it and immediately got feedback on it and realized, oh, there's a lot of really supportive people out there. And I started following people and it's like, oh, there's a lot of really cool resources that I didn't know about. And just this whole community that is incredibly generous and supportive. And so I realized very quickly how silly it had been to hold out for as long as I did. I never would have even entered Iron Viz if it hadn't been for being on Twitter at that time, because
Right.
I don't even think I would have been on my radar. And then I wouldn't have seen Sarah's blog about, why everyone should enter Iron Viz, which ultimately kind of inspired me to do my final entry. So yeah, I would, if you're not part of the community, if you're not out there already, definitely join and get involved, because it's really gonna help you. I feel like my skill level and my learning just, really amped up as soon as I joined.
I love that joining the community is what got you on social media.
Yeah.
It's so funny how that happens.
Mm-hmm.
Sarah, I would love it if you could link that. Oh, good. You did. I was going to say, could you link that blog post? Okay, great. Thank you so much, Lisa. I'm going to bring Sarah, if you want to come back on and we can just go through some general Q&A. That was awesome. I'm sorry for the confusion with the questions, but we got there.
You made me panic for a second because I hadn't got any questions.
Okay, so we got a few questions in the Q&A section. If you have questions for Sarah and Lisa, just general Iron Viz questions, feel free to ask in the Q&A, or you can type them in chat. At this point, I think it's totally fine. One of the questions that we got is, do you have tips on dashboard dimensions? I feel this is my biggest struggle currently to fit a dashboard. Is there a best used dimension for the desktop, given so many desktop and phone screens vary?
So I put an answer to that question in the Q&A. So I said it depends. So if for business dashboards, I typically use 1,400 pixels by 800 pixels, and I find that's a good size to fit on a single screen without scrolling. But it really depends on what your users are using, screen wise. So I'd say it's best to test after you publish to see if the viz is fit. But for public, a lot of people tend to do long form, so they'll go maybe 1,400 wide, but much longer. So if you look at Lisa's viz, it's quite long. I don't know if you remember, Lisa, how tall it was exactly, but
I don't. It was the tallest viz I've ever made.
Exactly. So that often with Iron Viz, you see a lot of viz like that, because I think it just makes it a little bit easier to do that storytelling rather than trying to cram everything on a single screen.
Okay, cool. What is your favorite chart type? This is a great question for both of you.
Ooh. I think it depends. I feel like it depends on what kind of data you're trying to visualize. Oh, my favorite.
I like dot plots. So that's where you have like or like dumbbell plots. So I think they're great for showing comparisons. They're typically my favorite.
Yeah. I also like a strip plot. Is that what they're called? Where it's just, I'm thinking of Jessica Moon's most recent. She just had a visit of the day where it was like showing sleep, but it was all just one line in strips of color. I really liked. Thought that was a really cool way to show time. That wasn't a line chart. That was neat.
As someone who isn't a data person, I just like the really pretty ones. Sarah, you showed one. You showed one, Sarah, that was on a dark background, and then it just had like pops of little color, like pink and teal. And I'm blanking on who
the Buffy, the Vampire Slayer.
It wasn't
one.
the Buffy one. The Buffy one was so cool. It was a simpler Viz. I'm definitely gonna go back through the recording to find it because I saw it and I was like, wow, that's so cool. And I know you answered some of these, but I'm gonna ask in here as well because I don't think everyone looks at the Q&A section. Regarding performance anxiety, did you get performance anxiety during Iron Viz? I think this is a great question for both of you. And do you still get performance anxiety, and what do you do to kind of avoid it or make yourself able to present?
Well, Sarah and I were in very different situations. I did not have to be on stage in front of thousands of people. I got to sit here in my house by myself with just like 3 people on the screen. So I mean, it was still super anxiety producing because, you know, you've been practicing and practicing and practicing. It's all leading up to this 20-minute build process. So there is definitely still some anxiety, but I think I was in a different situation completely than Sarah was.
Yeah, so like when I did it, it was like, I think there was like 4,000 people in the audience. But thankfully I couldn't really see anyone because the lights were so bright. You can see like the front row and I had no idea like how many people like were out there beyond that. But it was really nerve-wracking. I remember like shaking on the mouse to the point I could barely use the mouse because it was like kind of jumping all over my screen. But I think with Iron Viz, and Lisa, you'll probably agree with this, is that you're so focused on getting everything done in the time. You haven't got time to worry about like, you know, what the audience are doing or anything like that.
Yeah, that's true.
I feel like even still in virtual settings, I still get nervous in meetings sometimes, you know, if it's a meeting that I'm not 100% prepared for. So I can't imagine Iron Viz, you know that it's time to go and you have to do it in 20 minutes and you have to have people see you doing it in 20 minutes. I would feel, whew.
It's unlike any, I think, experience. Right. I think most people who are in data visualization are probably on the more introverted side. At least I know I am, and I think that's why we gravitate towards this field. So it's a very different experience, I think, than anything we've been through to be in that kind of spotlight and have that kind of pressure.
Yeah, I'd say Iron Viz is very unique. The finals are a very unique experience as well. It's like very rare you'd be tasked with building a Viz in 20 minutes in front of thousands of people, right? That just never happens in any other setting. So.
Amazing. We got a question from Jacqueline. I know we're running short on time. We have about 3 minutes left. Do you all have any tips on visualizing ratio? This one's a little specific. Do you have any tips on visualizing ratios by category, like turnover in Tableau? I'm finding it very challenging because of computing in Tableau, and I think it's probably because my skills are not at that level yet.
Good question.
It's specific.
I would maybe like Google like looking at different businesses that have approached like visualizing ratios and get some inspiration that way and see what you can do there.
I love to look on YouTube also for Tableau tips. Like one of the reasons that I applied to Tableau is because I've been a big fan of the community for a long time, and I've been following like Tableau Tim for a long time. And I think there are a ton of resources, like on Twitter, you can always just hashtag DataFam and ask that question, and I'm sure someone would get back to you and maybe even be willing to just DM with you and help you out. But also searching on YouTube, I've found a ton of resources, and just I love watching and learning.
Yeah. Or even just ask on the forums. That's a great place to go. If you can mock it up with some dummy data or Superstore, and then post an example of the forums on what you're trying to do, there'll be someone there to help you for sure.
Great. Okay, we have, yes, hashtag DataFin. Yes, yes. We have 2 more questions, so I'm going to make these our last 2. I don't know if you're able to close the Q&A, Alyssa, but what tips would you have for someone new to the Tableau community and creating visualizations?
So I would say start putting your work out there and start asking for feedback. And you can do like a general feedback when you post something, but sending someone a direct message and asking them directly for feedback, I feel like tends to be a little more lucrative because they can give maybe more specific advice than they might give in a public setting. So definitely starting to get feedback. I feel like that's when I started to really get better, is when I was having people outside of my work colleagues look at my work. So ask for feedback. I would say, subscribe to the Viz of the day. I would start perusing Tableau Public every day, like you were saying, Danika, just to start, seeing what else is out there, what kind of charts people are creating, things that you like, things that you don't like, just to get inspired, because I think, a lot of us draw inspiration from each other's work. And I think, once I started seeing what people were doing, outside of a business type setting, that's when, I just became aware of so many more things that you could do in Tableau that I didn't even know you could do before.
Yeah, and I would say check out community projects as well. So there's about 20, I think, right now. So that's a great place to start. Gives you an opportunity to practice and maybe just challenge yourself to try out new chart types or techniques.
One of the things that I did also is I go into Tableau Public and I look up things that I like. And then when I see the person who's creating the Viz, I usually will look them up on socials if they have socials and check out the other work that they're doing. That's one of the ways that I've just found a lot of awesome people in the community. And then we have another question. When do you let go of a Viz, as there's always much more that can be done to reach perfection?
That's a tough one. I tend to, it gets to a point where you have to accept that it's done, right? Yeah, I think done is better than perfect. There's a lot of people out there I know that have loads of unfinished Vizes on their Tableau Public that are hidden, that they've never shared. So I try and just publish it, even if I'm not 100% happy. I might tweak it later, but it gets to a point where you have to just draw the line.
Yeah, I would agree. There's never going to be a perfect point where it's done and final. It's just going to be at the point that you're happiest with it. And sometimes you have a deadline and you're going to have to publish it for Iron Viz. But yeah, there's no hard and fast rule. It's just kind of when don't try to make it perfect, because you're never going to finish it then.
Cool. Yeah, I think whenever you're starting something new, putting it out in the world is always going to be a benefit. It's always going to be a benefit because it will either help you be less anxious or nervous about getting your stuff out there. There's no downside to it. We have 2 more questions. Do either of you have like a hard out at 10?
No.
Okay, awesome. We'll just finish these questions. Can Lisa provide some guidance on the timeline creation?
The timeline from my feeder Viz, probably. Yeah, so I think it's either Ken or Kevin Flairledge. I can never remember who said what. But I think one of them said something along the lines of, once you realize that Tableau is just X and Y coordinates, you can basically draw anything you want in Tableau. So a lot of what that timeline is just X and Y points just to draw a line. And so that's all it is, right? It's just a line with lines coming off of it. And then I think it was all the little points for the season and episode markers was a separate Viz that I put on top of it. So that was separate again. It's just X and Y coordinates of where to place the points. And yeah, it's really just kind of drawing things out with coordinates and playing around to get everything that you want kind of in place.
We have one last question. Do you think somebody can reach the level in Tableau to create advanced visuals as they can be created through D3 or Python, etc.?
So, I mean, D3 has different capabilities, especially when it comes to interactivity than Tableau. So, you know, they have different plus points. So I think you could create something compelling in Tableau. You could also create something compelling in D3. It depends on what you're trying to achieve, really. But they are different tools, you know, and completely different kind of learning paths as well.
Awesome. I think that's it. I would love, I messaged Alyssa if you could share Sarah and Lisa's Twitters and also Tableau public profiles in the chat. That would be amazing. But yeah, thank you both so much for joining. Qualifiers are open now until February 7th. Make sure you check out #IronQuest. Make sure you check out #DataFam if you're not already part of the community. And thank you both so much.
Thanks
for having me.
And good luck, everyone.
Yeah, good luck, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.